are you talking about? The plate is like this big. What's up, folks? Welcome to Here's the Deal. Obviously, I'm solo today. On the show, Sarah's got big plans, big meetings that I'm not a part of. But lucky you get me along with my other friends. We've got Allie in Austin, and then we've got Robby Wilson from National Scouting Report. You guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So obviously, lots to talk about. I mean, the last week, I feel like we've got a couple of bombshells. But let's start off by talking about the Division I Council extending dead period to Jan 1. Robby, your initial thoughts?
Ludicrous. um, I mean, it's the sad part about it is that you remember conversations that me and you had, and I mean, some of them we could even go back to some of the previous Flow shows and go back to where I even on live said, hey, I'm putting myself out there, but I predict that this is going to be an extension through the rest of the year. It's just going to be a tablespoon here and a tablespoon there, and since COVID, since quarantine, it's been a little bit and a little bit, and we're going to push that a little bit further. And to be honest, two different reasons, but one, obviously, Division I football bringing in more money than Division II football, but number two, I think the plan was let's give them some good news that we're going to free up Division II and everybody get excited. Recruiting's going to be back to normal, and then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, it's kind of like hey, your low tire lot was on. We checked, and your left driver tire was low, but we went ahead and put air in it. You're good to go there, and you get excited. You're like, heck yeah, I can leave now. Oh, by the way, your rear passenger, it's completely flat. You're on the rim.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. The one thing I don't think a lot of people have thought about, being honest, if I was giving the NCAA kudos for anything, and this is going to catch you off guard, let me finish. It would be that they didn't spoon feed anymore. They didn't do it month by month and little bit by little bit to where it left everybody hanging. I value the fact that they made a firm decision, whether it's a right decision or wrong decision. Either way you go, nobody's going to agree. But I value the fact that they made a decision, and instead of doing the spoon feeding thing, they made a firm decision and stuck with it. And so, is it going to change recruiting altogether? Yes, I'm sure we'll get into that here in just a little bit. But it's not making recruiting impossible. It is just going to make recruiting a lot different. And like we talked about earlier, those that adapt, you'll adapt or die. But also those that have a little bit of patience, and are getting the right advice from the right areas are going to benefit in the long run.
What do you say to the people who are kind of up in arms when they see Division II, Division III, NAIA, JUCO, all with the ability to recruit, but that's not an option for Division I?
As tough as it is to hear, and we've talked about it before. Many many other people who are in softball, can tell you they did not understand. I mean, this may be a little bit too forward. I didn't understand, me personally, I did not understand the unevenness, unfairness of women's athletics versus men's athletics until I had my daughters, and way back in the day. And then I started to notice it and I thought, well, I can make up for it. And, as far as making sure that they're, and then of course, as the years transpired, as I got into college athletics and then as I got into recruiting and I saw things on a wider scale, that's when I learned that, there are some things that no matter what we do, we can't change. I remember growing up when the WNBA was a big deal. And Lisa Leslie and Rebecca Lobo and Cheryl Sparks, like they could take half of the NBA guys. They were legit. And then throughout the years, all of a sudden the WNBA is kind of non-existent. I mean, it's there, but you don't see it, you don't hear it. And so it's no different. That's the way that I've in the discussions with a lot of our scouts and a lot of my prospects. The thing that I've kind of explained to them, I'm not telling them, I'm telling you something that's hard to hear, but I'm not telling you anything that you did not already know. The truth is college football is bringing in the money, and especially at the Division 1 level. And we're not just talking about a little bit of money. When we're talking about Division 1 football, we're talking about, I'm not sure of the exact billions, trillions, obviously more than Mike Myers on Austin Powers, $1 million. And so it's a lot of money that's being lost if all of a sudden, and I'm not going to say the name of the school. Let's say a top five power 5 Division 1 program, that the coach is one of my favorite coaches in all of college softball. That I saw that welcome week, as they let kids back to school, they had 60 something kids, 60 something confirmed cases. At the end of day 7, they had 642. And I'm not telling anybody anything that anybody didn't know. There's news articles out there that showed it. But, basically it had increased that much in a 7-day period. And so they went through how to distance and should they send them home. And, after the first couple of weeks of letting kids back on campus, there were several campuses that turned around and sent kids home. You moved in, and 2 weeks later, hey, you're going to go home and study online. Um, and so, long story short to it, as far as what I explained to my prospects and explained to the general public, it's hard to hear, but it is the truth. College football, the income being made by college football and to an extent college basketball is, funds a lot of these other programs. And so when they looked at the large amount of money that was not only going to be lost for that individual school, but was going to be lost for the conference and going to be lost for, the governing bodies and things, naturally they had to take extreme safety precautions in order to make sure that there was a football season. Because if there is not a football season for a lot of these other programs, there will not be a softball team. And so it stinks, but this is going to catch you off guard. I hate it, but I think it was a necessity.
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand. They're protecting their assets, which are primarily football and basketball. Um, I don't know if that term really jives with people, but it right, we need those pieces in order for college athletics to move. And to move so with all of the sports participating. Because, I mean, I'm sure the costs for the new protocols, for changes
Yeah.
in stay. Like these are surmounting costs that are being racked up across the country from these Division 1 programs. So, I mean, when you paint the picture that way, it makes complete sense. I think on paper it looks, you know, very unfair that some are able to kind of go about business as usual in terms of recruiting, and then others, like I'm thinking about like Pac-12, who haven't, especially in California, or even schools in California and along the West Coast, just really haven't been able to do much. Um, it, it will astound people. The fact that like picking up a ball and a tee on the campus field is something that they're not allowed to do. But with some of those schools, like those precautions have been put in place. Um,
Yeah.
but amongst all this dead period talk, there are still many 22 recruits verbally committing. Your thoughts on or questions or concerns about these decisions being made right after September 1st? Some on September 1st.
Yeah. The 22s who jumped the gun on, and I say jumped the gun. I don't want to assume anything about anybody, but the 22s who jumped the gun on September 1st and or the next day and committed to said Division 1 program, almost kind of unrelated. I mean, I've seen a lot of people, a lot of the social media posts, and I've heard a lot of the backdoor comments where, oh, you say there's not supposed to be any recruiting going on, but all of a sudden she gets a call on September 1st and commits on September 2nd. Oh, there's something fruity going on. No, nobody said that no recruiting was going to be going on. They just said that it was going to have to be in a certain way, and so the coaches weren't bringing the kid on a visit. They weren't, being on the phone several times a week with the kid and stuff. But make no mistake, that coach has been evaluating that kid for the last year, and seen him multiple times, whether it was from a stream or not, and knows everything about that kid already. And, on the flip side of it, that kid has done a phenomenal job on the back end of keeping that coach updated with everything that she has going on academically, athletically, socially, everything, to where that September 1st phone call, even if they've never talked to each other, it's like they both have known each other all their lives. I've had a couple of kids like that, and it was no different last year. It was no different last year where, September 1st, September 2nd, September 3rd, had several of the 21s turn around and commit. And when I saw the judgment from some of the public on those kids, it was astounding. It was offensive. You know, none of those kids did anything illegal. None of those coaches did anything illegal. On the flip side of that, where we talk about the 22s, when the D1 period got extended to January 1st, the 22s basically got put in the same boat as the 21s have been. And, you kind of have to treat them the same now. The difficult part of that is, make no mistake, all the other divisions are going after, the 22s, every division there is. Um, and as we all know, it's a silent theory, but college softball recruiting is a hierarchy. Any legitimate mid-major kid or any legitimate Power Five kid has a couple of legitimate mid-majors going after them. Any legitimate small D1 kid has a few legitimate Division twos going after them. That's what elevates that program. If Jason Anderson at Southern Arkansas University goes after 10 kids who have a bunch of Division two or Division one offers, and he gets these two kids, those two kids are what's going to elevate his program to a national championship program. And so the odd, scary part about it, since everything has transpired, and especially since the NCAA came out and extended the Division one dead period until January 1st, I think not the most difficult, but it's been the most recurring and slightly stressful part of my job as the scout, is trying to help the kid and the parent understand not to rush things. Um, and I'm talking kids and parents that they're wanting to rush things, but at the same time, there's the Division twos that have these other offers on the kid are not setting any deadlines. They're not rushing them. But the kid is looking at it as, well, this fall is when I'm supposed to be committed. And if I can't do anything until January 1st, I think I'm just going to commit to over here. And the discerning thing, disappointing thing that I've seen happen, and keep in mind, not by any of my prospects, a couple of kids that I've talked to over the last couple of weeks, the discerning or disappointing thing that I have heard more often is a couple of these parents of these kids, that are not my prospects, that I'm looking at working with them, considering working with them, trying to make a decision. I end up deciding no, because they end up asking me the question of, well, let me ask you this. What if I commit to this Division two to go ahead and secure my offer? And then when January 1st happens, then I see what's on the table and everything. And there's going to be a lot of different opinions out there. My personal opinion, and I think the large majority of my scouts, and the large majority of NSR, we don't believe in committing and decommitting, committing and continuing to shop. The opinion is, it's similar to when I proposed to my wife and she said yes. We may not be married yet. I mean, we may just be engaged, but it doesn't mean that I can go date everybody else because we haven't signed the paperwork.
Right.
And so, that's been the most discerning thing that I've seen. Um, The 22s, like we said, they're in the same boat that the 21s were. The biggest, if there was one single large piece of advice, it's not really singular, but do they need to continue to consider those other Division II programs that we're going after them? Absolutely. But the biggest thing is now everything is on them. The Division I coach cannot come watch them at a showcase. The Division I coach cannot run a camp. The Division I coach basically is going to be limited to what the prospect supplies for the coach. So we go back to, we said the summer of stream is what we kept calling it. Well, now it's the year of stream. Streaming is going to be king because make no mistake, the coach can still watch the kid from a stream. So this fall, they're still going to be able to watch your stream and everything. So number one, if you're, it sounds horrible, if you're playing on a team that is not streaming and you have higher intentions, you may need to consider something. May need to consider either educating your coaches on the value of stream or finding coaches who understand the value of stream. And it doesn't have to be one of these other streaming services. You can stream to your team's Facebook page. That's the one thing, one misconception I've seen with the stream stuff. The college coaches do not care if it is on one of these other streaming services or what. All they just need to stream. They just need to know where to go. And so I had a lot of athletes this
You're
summer and
putting
this
us out
fall,
of
not just the
business, Robbie.
no, 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 not at all, not at all. I just
I'm messing with you.
not not at all. It just I had a lot of those kids. I mean, you and I both know y'all aren't going to go cover every tournament. Now the ones that are, it's so much simpler. Like you and I both know, I got more attention from coaches watching kids on Flow from the Tulsa Invite this summer than any of the other ones this summer, right? I mean, let's be honest.
Mhm.
It got more coach attention for the kids from that. But if it is this one team that's not even in an organization and they're playing in the, um, you know, save the base, tournament in their local town, all their team has to do is post up a phone or an iPad or whatever the case is to the fence and stream to their Facebook page. And if there are coaches that are wanting to watch, they will watch. The irony to it is it stinks, and trust me, the coaches want to be out watching and want to be out scouting in person. But the irony to all of that is I've actually had more Division I coaches tell me that and actually some of the Division IIs from this summer, it actually helped them a little bit in recruiting because rather than having to make a decision on I'm going to this showcase, I'm sending my this assistant to this showcase and this one to this one, they were able to post up and turn around and have three, four, five different showcases going on at one time. And it was less exhausting. And so they were actually able to accomplish more in terms of evaluation and stuff. But yeah, as far as the 22s are now going to be in the same boat as the 21s. Streaming is going to be key. Consistent communication with the college softball coaches is going to be key. And if you want me to, we can dive into the stuff that they need to make sure it's not complicated. But there are a handful of things that now the responsibility is on the prospect.
Yeah, can you get
It
into
always,
that? Just the do's and don'ts for recruits
yeah,
for recruiting during a pandemic.
yeah. I mean, the big thing when we're talking about all the other divisions, when we're talking about Division II, Division III, NAIA, JUCO, those it's going to be normal. It's going to be normal. There's a possibility of you seeing them at a showcase. They're going to be running camps. They're going to be running working camps that are tied to the showcase, that kind of stuff. The biggest thing I can tell you with as far as the Division Is, and we're not trying to just steer stuff towards the Division Is, but they're the ones that basically got handcuffed. So during the pandemic, during the lockup until January 1st, as a prospect, there's going to be a few key things that are going to change everything. And it's number one is going to be your communication with the coaches. It's going to your ability to maintain communication with the coaches because like I said, everything is on you. It's not complicated, but always know where your team is streaming, what link it is to, and don't I'll say this because none of the coaches are going to say it. Do not email a coach or a scout and tell them, please watch my stream. And then when we ask, where's the link? Don't tell us to go Google it. Don't tell us to
Ooh.
go find it. You wouldn't. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm talking about. I'm talking about, yeah, if you go, and they'll say, oh, it's on Facebook, just go Facebook the team. And, do you know if I go to Facebook and I type in firecrackers, do you know how many team? Oh, yeah, it's my firecrackers team page on Facebook. So don't do that. Find the link to the page. When in your email that you send to the coach, here's my schedule, and still include your schedule the same way, including name of the showcase, the day, the field, the time, the opponent, and then here's the link that we're going to be streaming to at these times. But also give them a security blanket. If you go to watch the stream and you have any difficulty, here is who you can contact. Give them a security blanket of who they can contact, to where I had a lot of coaches, and it's still been that way, but coaches that go to watch one of my kids' streams and something's going on, and they'll turn around and text me. I mean, being truthful, there was one of them that turned around and texted me and said, hey, you may want to let whoever's running the stream know that their microphone is live, because she's sitting there literally talking about how her kid had bathroom issues this morning at the hotel because of
Oh
greasy
my
sausage.
goodness. No.
Yeah, I ain't kidding
Wow.
you. And so I had to tell, but but that kid, luckily, when she sent the email to the coach, she gave him the perfect schedule. Here's the link that it's streamed to. If you have any complications, here's my scout's cell phone number. Please feel free to text him. And that coach did. Um, that is the biggest thing, is including, here's the schedule, here's the stream link, the link to go watch it on the stream. Here's a couple of my previous videos, which, whether it's from your hitting lesson on Wednesday or whether it's from the showcase 2 weeks ago, here's a couple of my previous videos. And then go ahead and include your profile. Make no mistake, everybody thinks because it's a dead period for the Division One that they're not going to still be contacting the kids that they are able to contact and want to contact. That part hadn't slowed down. If we dove into it a little bit further, let's say ABC University is a Division One program right over here, and they want to recruit Susie, who's a 2022, and they've
Susie sounds
watched the
good.
stream. They've watched her stream. They've watched all her videos. They've talked to the people who can vouch for her and everything, and they're ready to move forward. But dadgummit, they can't bring the kid on a visit because it's a dead period. That does not stop the kid from visiting campus. So she's a 22. He doesn't have any communication hold up. So when he texts her, hey, I saw y'all are going to be playing here. Why don't y'all make a little bit of a 1 hour detour and stop by ABC University and take a tour yourself? And then after you check out campus and check out the facilities and everything, FaceTime me later on this evening and we'll talk about it. Well, guess what? There's zero violation there. So there are still things being worked out, and without any complication. And I've had several of them that are doing the virtual visits. I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of our scouts that we've started doing some of the virtual visits, so that number one, we can become more familiar with schools that we're not familiar with, but also so that we can more adequately advise our prospects, on how they should properly prepare for virtual visits. And so, as far as what the 2022 should be doing, like I said, the communication is going to be the key. It's always been the key, but it's even more so important right now. The kids, my 22s, our 22s that are still being recruited as much as they were before, if not more, during a more difficult time. If I had to point to one thing that is making that happen, it is their consistency and their communication.
Yeah,
And a
so
lot of other
so they're
coaches have
gonna
hit it.
the prospects really have to take onus of this whole process. And yes, your parents can, but honestly, if I'm a parent, I'm going to be like, look, I'm going to help you as much as I can, but this is your responsibility. You need to make
Yeah.
sure that you know how to use iMovie. You put up all those dumb videos on your social. I'm sure you can put together some little highlight clip of yourself, right? I mean, I'm just being
Yeah.
being truthful.
Yes.
Going to use in college, something you use out of college. Like being able to communicate is absolutely key to success.
Mhm.
Whether
and,
that's
and
in
time management.
time management, big parts. But
Great
Robbie, I
point,
do have to say
Allie.
this. I love listening to you talk about recruiting. As for me, like I'm not dialed in the way like Ches is or like the way you are. So I love like the analogies that you give. It's very easy to understand, and I just want to thank you for just like bringing all all the good info to our show.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, I have been made fun of for my analogies more than anything else in my career. They're always fun. They make sense to me. But even my wife thinks that my way of looking at things. But like I've told her, the prospects. The one thing that I figured out about working with the prospects for as many years as I have is girls are. People are going to hate me for saying this. Girls are tougher than boys. Girls can handle anything that you throw at them as long as you properly prepare them. I think the biggest thing, not just with recruiting in general, but I think the biggest thing with the pandemic right now and with quarantine is the unknowns. The prospects not getting the entire bit of information. If they go on social media and they go to a lot of other stuff, they're getting bits and pieces that talk about bits and pieces, but they don't necessarily know the answer to everything. And when you clarify it to them, and then you give them a silly metaphor like I use for them to understand it, and they're like, "Oh, got it. Okay, cool." They'll handle it. They're not scared. The girls are tough, man. And like I say it all the time. I've had boys. I've had boys with other sports, and I like working with girls. I love working with softball, and not just because of the game of softball, but because girls are resilient, dude. As long as you prepare them and you explain stuff to them, and they feel comfortable enough to where they can ask you open questions without feeling silly asking you, they'll handle anything you throw at them. So,
Awesome. And just to kind of sum up what you just, some of the things you just said is uh, basically be really clear about your communication between coaches. That means having the right dates and times for your schedules, having a link to those streams, or even if it's games that you've played in the past or workouts, have links to those as well. Just make it easy for the college coach to look through all the things that they need to look through: game footage, workouts. One thing we didn't mention was what are your thoughts on practice being filmed? I noticed that some clubs are beginning to do that. I'm totally for it. Your thoughts?
I I think of it, and this is going to kind of sound odd. I think of it as every every coach, and so the way I always explain it to the girls is every coach is human. So naturally, they're going to have their own type and likes and dislikes. So, like one of the things I always explain to the prospects is, I'll embarrass them. I'll say, well, Susie, you got a boyfriend, and she'll get all red and yes, I do, okay, so you probably know what your type is, and yeah, I do, and then that's the same way college coaches are. That's why, you and I both know. We could sit here and talk about a handful of coaches, and you know exactly the type of player that they like, and different things like that. And so this is no different. College coaches, there are some college coaches that whenever I go to talk to them about a prospect, they want me to text. They'll tell me, Robbie, I don't check my email. My graduate assistant does, and I don't really bother with it. Text me. There are some coaches that I know, they're old school, and they tell me, Robbie, I don't do that whole text message and then snap facing and insta tweeting thing. You're gonna have to call me, and then there are some coaches that even though we'll text and talk all the time, they'll say, hey, do me a favor and email me everything on Susie so that I can keep everything in line, keep everything organized. It's the same way when it comes to video delivery. You want to make it easy for the coach to recruit you, but you want to make it easy for any coach to recruit you. There are some coaches that want skills footage. There are some coaches that want game clips against live competition. There are some coaches who really want a combination of both. So now that it's coming to not just getting video of different things, but streaming different things, I think it's a step forward and genius, to be honest, for the teams to be streaming every opportunity that they have. If it is like Scott Smith with the Bombers, he'll turn around and he'll stream when he's just doing lessons and working with some of the girls, and it may be into one or two girls at a time, but he'll turn around and he'll stream it. And if only one or two coaches end up running across it, there's a possibility one or two of those coaches want something to do with that kid or have a need that matches that kid. So whether it's the kid, doing lessons with their instructor, whether it is the team streaming their practices, whether it is like the Blaze, putting together a virtual combine and streaming that and everything. I think that's genius.
Hmm.
Um, every opportunity is an opportunity. Now, are there going to be some coaches that say, "I ain't watching that crud"? Yeah, but there's also some coaches that are, have her send me the videos afterwards. I'm not going to sit there and watch some hard to see stream and da 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 da. Have her send me the clips afterwards. There's always going to be these coaches that don't like it and these coaches that do. But when you include every opportunity there is, you encompass all of them.
Yeah, great point. Let's switch gears a little bit. So obviously yesterday, big news out of the Big 12. Texas Tech coach Adrian Gregory resigned, and softball isn't unique to any other sport where there could be potentially coaching changes. As a scout, that helps potential recruits and maybe even some recruits that are going to Texas Tech. Um, Thoughts on it initially, and then what are you telling your recruits in the midst of something like this happening?
Being honest, I think it's something that we're going to see a little bit more and more of. It's sad to say that, but I think it's not the last time that we see it. Obviously, I have to walk a fine line on how I explain everything, but when it comes to the prospects that are at the school, I'll give you a prime example because one of my 2019s, and if she watches this, she'll know exactly who it is. One of my 2019s was one of the most highly recruited kids that I had in that year at the time, and that kid had narrowed down all of her Division I offers, and she chose one particular school that kind of surprised everybody because it was a very small Division I program compared to all of her other offers. She chose it because that coach, and I know everybody says don't make a decision based on a coach, but this coach was not just one of my best friends. He is probably one of the best recruiters in the country. And the week before signing, he turns around and lets her and all the other girls know, hey, me and so are getting married and we're going somewhere else. And so all of a sudden, the coach that she had planned on playing for, so naturally it was a panic. The good thing is when she had narrowed down everything, she had narrowed it down to her top two. She was really struggling with making that decision. And when she did make that initial decision, now that that's not really, she could still maintain the commitment, but it wasn't the coach that she had originally committed to. It made it pretty easy for her to make that other decision. So she ends up changing it, ends up deciding to basically transfer her commitment to the new school. She ends up signing with the new school. She goes there freshman year. Everything's great. End of freshman year, all of a sudden, or actually end of the semester, first semester, that coach ends up taking a Power Five job on the East Coast. Surprised all of us, even me, because that coach is a good buddy of mine. I didn't see it coming, but we all understood where it came from. Well, then we're scared. I end up talking to her again. You have a decision to make at that point. You can wait it out and see how the new coach coming in is going to be, or you can go ahead and make a move and enter the transfer portal. She decided she was going to be a teammate. She was at least going to give it one semester, see how the new coach was going to be. They end up hiring probably one of the best JUCO coaches in the country to come in and run this program. This JUCO coach had won national championship program after national championship program, and hire her, and she's excited, ecstatic. And 2 months ago, maybe give or take a little bit, she decided she's leaving, and she had her own reasons and everything. Some of it health reasons and stuff. But all of a sudden, this kid, this 2019, has endured all that in a short period of time. And so once again, me and her go to have the conversation of, do you want to enter the transfer portal and make a move, or do you want to wait it out? And again, her thing was, I want to wait it out. I want to see what the new coach is going to do. Luckily, what they ended up doing was elevating the assistant coach to the head coach, and so it was a coach she was already familiar with, and she ran the same type of atmosphere and stuff. As far as advising the kids that are at a program when a coach leaves, that is the general thing. Is it depends on what the reasoning was and how toxic of an environment there is. 99% of the time, when a kid is in that situation, the coach has taken another position, um, or there's been external circumstances. Um, there is that 1% where there is some extenuating circumstances going on and it's a toxic environment and a huge blowout happens. Those situations, as far as my prospects, obviously I'm going to let them do what they want to do and I'm going to back them up. But like I always tell them, you can wait and see who they bring in and then make a decision. But a lot of times that program's going to be under a microscope for a little while, so don't necessarily know that that's the best environment. As far as kids who commit, and then or kids who are pursuing a program, that's one of the reasons. Like I tell all the rest of the girls, we don't pigeonhole on a school. I personally, not they're not prospects of mine. I personally know of a couple of kids that are 2022s that I saw this summer, and as I went to talk to them, Texas Tech or bust, and they did not want to look anywhere else. And so, naturally, I can't set myself up for failure if it's one program or nothing. And they had pigeonholed themselves so much, and so now I can almost anticipate that I'll be hearing from those kids because now all of a sudden that program is not there's obviously some shakeup going on there. And like I said,
A
there.
larger question that I'm thinking about because um, the transfer portal has been in the news for so long now, and a lot of us are up to date with all of that. Do you think the transfer portal eventually and the number of transfers going in and out of programs is going to be something ADs start to look at in terms of uh, the health of a program? Because that strikes me, right? When we see, like, I'm looking at the numbers for tech in the last 2 years. I believe seven recruits have left. I mean, that's almost a whole roster right there. And is that going to be a red flag for some ads who are maybe either thinking about extending a contract for a coach, and then on top of that, with the rankings, right, ac- across many different mediums, these schools who lose top prospects, is that going to be another ding? Is that going to be something that's kind of called into question when we're evaluating some of these coaches?
I could be totally wrong, but one of the things, talking with a lot of my scouts, and talking with other people, a lot of the other coaches, I have a feeling, if you really sit back and think about it, over the last year and a half, 2 years, really, let's say 3 years, we've seen things open up and become easier. It is easier to not be faithful anymore, and I say that there's both sides. It has just become a lot easier to, if you go somewhere and you don't like it, it's become a lot easier to leave. And it's become a lot easier to not have to sit out a year unless it's an in-conference rule and stuff like that. And the long story short to it, I think it is, what do you call it, the perfect storm. It became a lot easier to leave. Then all of a sudden you had COVID and quarantine and everything, so you had a lot more people wanting to, and the extension of you got an extra year of eligibility, and it's the perfect storm. So now all of a sudden the transfer portal is, I mean, ridiculous is probably the easiest way to put to it. It is ridiculous, um, and it's kind of made the rest of the. I mean, you and I both know how many coaches have said, yeah, it's a possibility I could end up taking another 21. But to be honest with you, I'm waiting to see how a couple of these kids on the transfer portal pan out. And that's been the name of the game. And so I've actually started over the last couple of weeks to have coaches say, I'm holding off on a couple of these 22. Man, I think I'm going to have to do that. But man, it would really benefit me if I could get one of these kids out of the transfer portal. And so the transfer portal. So I could be totally wrong. But one of the things I tell all of my prospects is headquarters expects me to stay ahead of things, not to stay on top of things. And so, lack of a better reference, I think it's all going to crash. I think that over the next 2 years, maybe it may be longer, but over the next 2 years or so, it's going to go in reverse a little bit. And I don't know if it's going to be individual schools, if it's going to be conferences, or if it'll be the NCAA as a whole. But they're going to figure out a way to politely and respectfully penalize people for changing programs. Um, whether it is, re-employing the sitting out and not giving them as many luxuries and things like that. I think it'll be 2 years out because, you know, a lot of people agree that it's going to, at the very least 2 years from now is when we will start to see some of the programs start to have head in the direction of having a normal roster and start to get back to a decent budget and things like that. I think that's when you're going to start to see some of the regulations going back in order to decrease the size of the transfer portal again.
All right, last question, Robby. Predictions for 2021. What does softball look like?
It, it's going to be a little scary. I think I was actually talking to Mike about it this morning, or a little bit ago. If you really sit back and think about it, some of these Division I programs have not seen some of these recruits since January of the year before, or January of this year. So now, assuming it's not extended, let's assume that the dead period is not extended. Now in January, all of a sudden they can get out and recruit. Here's where the chaos is going to happen, and everybody who sits back to wait until then, they're going to be up a creek without a paddle, and there's no other way to word it. Because what's going to happen? Let's assume the dead period isn't extended. All of a sudden, every Division I is going to be running camps, and there's going to be multiple camps at each school, and it's going to be controlled chaos on any given day, any given weekend. There's going to be a ton of them, but any individual kid is going to, on any given day or any given weekend, going to have anywhere from 5 to 10 that she has to choose from. And so it's going to behoove her to know ahead of time what schools are more interested, what schools she should be spending more time with. It's going to be controlled chaos. And my additional prediction to it, I know that the camp thing, if they don't extend the dead period, January 1st is going to be controlled chaos. The additional part to it is I don't think a lot of that ends up slowing down if the season resumes in mid to late February like it should be. I think you end up having a whole lot more of little smaller individual, a pitcher catcher clinic with a maximum of 8 people, 4 pitchers, 4 catchers, and stuff like that, so that they can get hands on with the kid and everything and still be able to see them, but not have to worry about running a humongous camp. I think we're going to see a whole lot more of that, not just from schools that have always done that, but schools that haven't. And I say that because there's a lot of coaches who, in years past, haven't ran a whole lot of camps. They haven't had a whole lot of camps at their campus. They've not been a fan of it, and they've told me it's something that they're going to have to adapt to. They've told me, when I've asked them, I know in years past you went and worked so and so's camp or so and so's camp, and they say, yeah, to be honest, Robby, we're going to have to get used to running camps on our campus. So as far as January 1st, it's not just going to be controlled chaos. The girls who do their job for the next 30, 60, 90 days, through the end of the year, they'll have a good idea of January 1st, but it's still going to be controlled chaos. And so not only time wise, financially, and mentally, it's going to be draining. Every one of those kids every one of those 22s, and remaining 21s that are uncommitted, they need to be prepared for having to go all over the place, and having to spend a substantial amount of money on camps.
Wow. Well, great insight, Robby. Really appreciate all of your words of wisdoms and all your great metaphors. I know, I'm sure a lot of your job during this time is uh, to tell parents and players to take a breath and let's make some good decisions. And and start there versus like feeling like you got to be a million places at once. Um,
Absolutely. You hit the nail
so
on the head.
yeah, we thank you so much for all your words of wisdom, and thanks so much for joining the show.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks,
you.
Well,
Robby.
thank y'all for having me. Thank you guys.
Well, folks, that's the deal for today. And what's up next? We've got 2022 rankings and 2021 rankings, and we're hoping to share some good news about a great fall event for those of you at home. Hoping to announce that soon. So stay tuned. That's the deal.